All right, hi everyone. My name's Hilary and I'm a program director here in the School of Science at UC. I have responsibility for medical science, biomedical science, and part of the generalist Bachelor of Science. So I'm really excited for those of you who are perhaps listening to this recording later on and those of you in the room to meet all of you today. Essentially what we wanted to do is make sure that you had this course advice session, and obviously there is a recording and you'll have access to the slides later on. Make sure you've got access to this so that at any point in your study throughout UC, perhaps really important here going into your first semester, but at any point in your study, you've got this as a one-stop shop resource so that you can return to it. And if you have any questions or queries or concerns at any stage, this advice session is basically to show you what's on offer and where you can go to get help and support to get the most of your studies throughout your 3 years or however long you end up being here with us. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional owners of the lands where Bruce's UC campus is situated. Some of you listening in from elsewhere or perhaps attending online or coming a bit later might be on other traditional lands. But essentially, I think we're so lucky here at UC. I've come from Adelaide Uni, so we're definitely a city campus there, and there's never any kangaroos munching on the grass when you walk past and get a coffee. So I feel really fortunate to be here on the lands of the Ngunnawal people, getting to go to work and study every day. I'll direct your attention a little while to this course advice Canvas site. What we'll actually do is we'll end up watching a video there. So we have our wonderful Dean Janine, who's recorded a video for everyone to welcome them to UC campus. But I'll also, in a couple of slides coming up, introduce you to some of the other people that you'll get to know throughout your study. But our wonderful Dean Janine definitely welcomes you. And yeah, you'll see her around potentially in some of your units, but also around campus, hopefully. So who am I and why am I giving you this talk? Why is it me and not somebody else? I'm a lecturer here in the School of Science at UC. So for those of you who have some chemistry coming up, you'll definitely have the misfortune of seeing me in a number of your courses. Apologies. But I'm also the program director of these several science courses that you can see on the screen right now. And basically that means I've got academic oversight of your study and your progression. The easiest way to get in touch with me is this general SciTech student inquiries email address here. So there's a whole education team behind that email address. And basically, if you have a question that they feel needs to be escalated to me, they will get you onto me straight away. But you might have some questions that can be helped or answered by numerous other people. So one of the things that they will do is basically send your query to the right person. So that's the best way to get in touch. There are a bunch of other people who you will see within the faculty. So as I mentioned, our Executive Dean, Professor Janine Deacon, that's her. You'll see her in some units depending on if you study ones that she's taking coming up, but you'll also see her just around campus. So please feel free to say hello. We also have our Associate Dean of Education who's got oversight of the whole program that you're studying in, Associate Professor Tamsin Kelly. She's an analytical and forensic chemist, and also our Head of School, Professor Tariq Azaz. So if you're here on campus today, you'll definitely see him. But once again, we're actually really fortunate here in UC. So many of our most senior academics and our most expert researchers are actually heavily involved in the writing and delivery of your units. So from the word go, you're going to have access to some really senior academics and some people who hopefully you'll end up building your careers with. So make sure you get involved and basically introduce yourself and attend as many of your teaching sessions as you can so that you can get access to these incredible researchers and educators. As you can see here on the screen, we've got a program director team. So we've got a number of courses here in the School of Science. Hopefully, if you're in the room right now, it's because you're studying biomedical, medical or general science. But we also have environmental science and a forensic science course, which is just finishing up at the moment. And so in the program director team, I've also got my colleague, Dr. Adrian Dusting, who you might see for some advice as well. And in fact, you definitely will see taking some physics and data analysis coming up in your first year. All right, so where can you go to get some general help? So we'll go through some of the places where you can go to get academic help in terms of course advice for the actual units you're studying, but there's a whole heap to uni aside from just the specific subjects that you're interested in. So for that, for things outside of your actual course that you might have questions about, we actually have Student Central. So they're located in Building 1. Hopefully some of you have been to Building 1 already, but basically that's your first stop for any administrative inquiry. So they can help you with, there's IT help that's available there with a service desk. If you've got questions about your fees or enrolments or timetabling, student ID cards, all of that kind of thing. If you haven't headed there yet to get an ID card, you should probably make that one of the first things that you do. But basically, all of the admin involved in your study is located over in Building 1 with Student Central. Even if you reach out to perhaps myself or our education team, chances are your question actually might be answered by them first. So we might direct you over there as well. They have an email address and they also have a phone number. If in doubt, though, actually they have face-to-face desks over in Building 1. So it's always a really good idea to talk to someone face-to-face if you can. The neat thing is also we have course advice over there. So whilst we have an education team that's embedded in our science buildings here, we also have that team who travels over to Building 1, and they have sessions every single week where you can go and see them. So once again, really good place to go for any questions that you might have. All right, how do you find course information? So yes, you might head over to Building 1 to ask all those administrative questions, but if you want to find out some information about your actual study that you're going to do over the course of your course, no puns intended there, where do you go for that information? Well, actually, we have what's called a digital handbook, and it looks like this. So if you head to our UC website, you'll find a page that's called Find a Course, and you can actually search by whole course. And what we mean by course is your degree. So, for example, the Bachelor of Medical Science, that's an example of a course. So you can find your whole course that lists all of the units you need to do, or you might want to just search for an individual unit, and this Find a Course page will help you do any of those things. It's really, really handy because if you look at the particular course that you're in, it'll actually take you to a page where it literally maps out all of the requirements. So it tells you exactly which units you need to take and exactly which ones you have choice over. It also gives you a general study plan. So it will tell you, let's say you start in semester 1 at the start of the year, what would your study pattern generally look like if you were taking 4 units a semester? It gives you the contact details of the convener, so that's the person who's responsible for delivering and rolling out each of those units to you. It might give you information about the textbook. If the unit outline's been published, it'll give you huge amounts of information about every individual unit that you need to take. So when in doubt, you can certainly reach out to us to ask a question, but we have this online because we know a lot of you are studying flexibly. So you've probably got, you might have carers duties, you've probably got paid work responsibilities, you might have volunteer responsibilities you've signed up for. So you're really busy people. So basically that digital handbook will answer most of your questions about your study without you having to reach out to one of us. Certainly not saying you shouldn't reach out to us, you absolutely should, but a lot of the questions can be answered that way. And that way you've got to look up something in the middle of the night, you actually can do that yourself and get that answer as soon as possible. Another site that's really, really useful for you is the course advice site that's run by the School of Science, and this is on something called Canvas. Now you'll see that there's a link down the bottom here, uclearn.canberra.edu.au, and we'll talk about UC Learn, or in other words, Canvas, coming up in a bit more detail. But we've got our own course advice site that's there, and there's heaps of information for you there. So there's all kinds of study plans there, no matter what year or what semester you're starting in. There's information for how to get credit if you've done some study elsewhere, for example. There's information for how to get in touch with people and ask questions about variation to enrolment. So head to this site here, but also you can head in and get some course advice in person. Again, we've got some information here O week or in different weeks of the semester. You can drop in and see one of our education team, or you can flip them an email. So there's basically heaps of ways to get your questions answered. Again, all of these things might be queries that you have. You can head to the course advice site here to get some information on them, and or you can drop in and actually see the team. That's usually a really good way to go about doing it. If you email, you will obviously get a response, but having a quick chat to someone can often get things cleared up a lot more quickly. So definitely highly recommend that. All right, we've mentioned email addresses that will be useful to you. What we haven't mentioned yet is actually how to go about using them. And it might seem a bit frustrating when you're communicating with uni. Most of you, I'm sure, are super used to using a personal email address. But we actually ask you, it's really important for you to use only your UC email address when you're communicating with staff. It's not that we're trying to be pedantic, but actually your UC email address is the only way that we can be certain that we're actually communicating with you personally. And for some simple questions, it might not really matter, but particularly for me as a program director and a unit convener, I'm really often communicating with students about quite sensitive things. So it might be their grades, it might be their study progress, it might be their financial situation, it might be their mental health situation that I'm trying to give them some support with. So I can't be communicating over email where it's an outside personal address, because it means I can't actually confirm that I'm talking to you. So when we ask you to email with your UC address, that's all we're doing. It's really just to try and keep your personal sensitive information as confidential as we can. So please make sure you're using your UC email. There's a couple of other bits of information here, I guess, with other forms of communication with the uni. So we have a student portal called MyUC. We have Canvas, which is our learning management system. We've obviously got remote login, and we've got campus computers that you can use. If at any stage you have difficulty with any of these IT aspects of your communication and your university life, we actually have an IT service desk. So you'll notice them in Building 1, but again, they have an email address and also a phone number that you can use. And if you need to figure out your password or any of that access in your first couple of weeks, definitely head over there to get some help. All right, so what does Canvas look like? Some of you may have used this before at school, or perhaps a workplace even, but Canvas is the learning management system that we use here at UC. So we mentioned one of the sites before is this School of Science information and advice page, but you'll actually have a Canvas site for every single unit that you do here at UC. So all of you, no matter what degree or course you're studying here in science, you will all at some point have to do the amazingly named unit, contextual physics with mathematics. And so you can see here, for example, this person who's on Canvas has a Canvas page or a Canvas site for that unit. So no matter what units you do here at UC, you will have a page on Canvas for each of those. And it's actually the way that your conveners will display all of the information and run their unit. So you want to be checking your Canvas pages once a day if you possibly can be. You can set them up to give you alerts as well, to email you. So it's really up to you how you get the information. But Canvas, I can't stress it enough, is hugely, hugely important. It's how all of your units will be run. And we actually try, I guess, our best to be as flexible as possible. So we know that you're all busy people. So we try and make your learning flexible. But what it does mean is if you're really choosing to not come to campus for those learning activities that are being put on for you, many of them will be recorded and there'll be opportunities to learn in a flexible way. But it does mean that for us as conveners, we're often not seeing a bunch of you anymore. So the only way we have to communicate is through Canvas. So you really need to make sure that you're on there every day and looking at what's being posted, what announcements your convener is making, when things are due. All of that information is held on there for you. So as an example, here is, I guess, that one of the tiles on the Canvas site for that course advice site that we mentioned. So the School of Science Course Advice and Information Canvas site. It's a bit of a mouthful there, but once again, that URL is there. Please go and check that out straight away. So you might only just now be checking out some of your units that are coming online with Canvas, but this course advice site is live all the time, and it's got so much information there about your study science altogether. So it's just one place to go. If there's nothing else you take away from today's session, it would be, I need to go and check out this course advice site on Canvas to get all of the information that I can. The really handy thing about this too, much like the digital handbook that I mentioned before, that's got basically everything you might want to know about your specific course and your specific units. This site here has all of the kind of extra bits and pieces. So, you know, if I chose to drop to 3 units a semester, where should I go for help? If I actually want to delay my study and start in semester 2, what would my study plan look like then? I've got to take some professional practice during my study. What should I do to prepare myself for a placement, for example, in industry or a research group? I want to join a student society. How should I go about doing that? So you can see that there's heaps of stuff here that would help you out. And again, that comes from that general course advice site. All right, so we've mentioned School of Science stuff and where to get help. We've also mentioned the general admin places to get help, so heading over to Student Centre in Building 1. But I'm just going to run you through a number of the things that we also offer here at UC that can basically help you get the most of your study whilst you're here. And I think sometimes people view these things as, if I access these things, it means that I'm struggling or I'm failing in some way. And that's absolutely not true. Basically, you're paying, your student fees go towards UC being able to provide all of these extra things that we're about to run through. So I like to see them basically as coaches. If you want to improve your, something in a sporting realm, you would go and get a coach to help you out with that and to basically make yourself as good as you possibly can be. So all of these things that we're talking about here are just coaching, essentially, to help you get the most out of your study. So one of the things we offer here is study skills, and this is on campus and online study help. So these guys here can help you with all kinds of things from, time management to report writing, English language skills if you've got English as an additional language or dialect. They can also help you with academic referencing, which is of course really important now that you're here at UC and particularly in the science area. Even things like academic integrity. So we obviously take this really seriously at university and again in scientific research and reporting. And this might be a little different to things you've experienced perhaps at school or in other workplaces before now. So you might really want to make sure you get your head around what the requirements are, and study skills is a place that you can go to do that. So it's all those little things that might not be explicitly covered in your units now that you've kind of progressed to university, but the expectation nevertheless is there that you will be able to do these things. And so it's a one-stop place for you to get help with all of those things. Again, there's some details here for how to get in touch. Other specific study skills services that actually get offered, one of the best things is this PALS group here. So this is peer-assisted learning sessions. And what this means is there's students who've recently completed the units that you're about to go into really successfully. So they're there to help you answer the content questions in those units and basically help you get the most out of your study for those. And it might mean, hopefully by the end of these sessions, you don't feel like myself or the other academics that you come across are too intimidating, but you might have some queries where you're like, oh, you know what, I just want to ask someone who's not an academic about these questions. I want to feel like I can just be confident to ask whatever I want. And so these PALS leaders are people just like you who've just finished these units and been successful. So they're often really approachable. They can give you tips for how to study the unit as well as just the content. So they're really helpful. Another thing I'll draw your attention to here is Studiosity. So actually through all of your Canvas sites, you get linked access to this, and it's actually 24/7 study help. So as a unit convener, I'm never going to post information, at midnight and say, hey guys, you need to do this thing right now, because I don't expect you to be working then. But for yourself, with your own plans and your responsibilities, you might decide, okay, there's an hour of time at night between 11 and midnight where I'm going to get some of this study done. And I'm not recommending that to you, but we get that you're all busy, so you might do that. But obviously, if I'm not expecting you to be online, then you're hopefully not expecting me to be online then, which means I'm not going to be around to help you in those out of hours times. But we have this thing called Studiosity, which means you can jump online and ask any questions that you have, basically. And because it is 24/7, you can do that when it's flexible to you. There's a bunch of other things there on that site, so feel free to have a look and what might support you best. We've also got health and wellbeing services here on campus. So medical and counselling is located over in Building 1 as well, right near Student Central. So essentially, if you've got any health challenges, you can head over there for doctor's appointments. There's also appointments with counsellors over there as well, so you can head over there for all of those needs. We also have student wellbeing on campus. So they are a wellbeing team, essentially providing you with individualised support, just basically to help you navigate uni in the best way that you possibly can. So we know that everybody has times that are up and down in their lives. That's unavoidable, it happens to all of us, but it might be all kinds of things that are out of your control as well. So if you have financial challenges or housing challenges, it might be that you want to launch a grievance at some point throughout your university study. They can navigate you and basically be advocates for you through all of those things. And again, there's some contact details there. We also have some specialised services depending on your background and what things you might be doing here at UC. So for example, if you're an international student, we have a support service for you, and there's some information on our site for how to get in touch with those staff members who can help you there. So specifically tailored to things like your student visa conditions, your wellbeing here while you're here on campus, all kinds of things like that. Careers UC is also a wonderful service. So it helps you if you're going on placement, if you're trying to find a job, if you're trying to get your CV ready for things, all that kind of thing. And you'll see them embedded in some of your units throughout your study as well, which is really helpful. I'll also just quickly flag Inclusion UC here. So this is for students who would like to provide some support for if you've got some challenges in your life, for example, an ongoing health condition. So one of the examples here is we might have a student who might be hearing impaired, and they would work with Inclusion UC, who would communicate with that student in a way that sort of facilitates them to talk to their conveners, who might then be able to make sure they're using closed captioning for all of their I guess their recordings or their lectures that they're doing. So it's just a central team who helps students navigate through some of those negotiations with their conveners. It doesn't have to be a physical challenge. It can also be mental health conditions. So head over there if you feel like that might be useful. Even small things like, we have students who get a reasonable adjustment plan, which automatically gives them 7-day extensions to things. So it's definitely something to go and talk to Inclusion UC about if you feel like you fall into that boat and you could benefit from some of those extra supports. Another really cool program we have here at UC is the UC Student Mentor Program. So again, this is students who've recently gone through the units or the courses that you're going through, and can provide you just with some support about navigating uni life. So they're a little bit different to the PALS leaders who are unit specific, so they'll help you with your actual study in specific units. These UC mentors will help you navigate university life. And again, you might just be sitting there thinking, oh, I've got this question which I think is a stupid question and I don't really want to go and ask a staff member because I think it's a bit silly. First of all, please don't feel that way. We are here to help you out, so there's no question that's a stupid question. But if you do feel like, oh, I just really want someone to answer this, it would really help me, but I don't want to go and ask a staff member, UC mentors are really amazing for all of those things because they know exactly how you're feeling because they've just been in that boat. So sign up to get a mentor through these details, and also perhaps think about yourself being a mentor once you've got through some of your study and you're feeling confident. All right, where are a couple of locations that you might be interested? So we are in Building 7 in the Mega Lab, which all of you will see at some point through your science study because of your required units. But over here, the Student Resource Centre Building 6 is a physical location where the PALS students are located. So if you have PALS sessions with those leaders, they'll be over in Building 6. It's also an amazing resource because there's just a heap of study spaces over there, as well as access to books, other groups of students who might be studying, some of those study skills are over there, and those services. And you notice down the other end of the concourse, this is the Students Central here in Building 1, and also the refectory, so that's a good place, plenty of things to eat and drink over there. Last but not least here, hopefully you're also going to be having fun on campus, so it's not just all about admin and study of units. This is just a handful of student societies that you'll be able to sign up for in your first couple of weeks. So these are the science-related ones, but also there's heaps of other ones as well. But we do have the Forensic Student Association, UC Supporting Women in STEM. We've got an Environmental Science Society, which you can sign up to even if you're not an environmental science student. But for you guys, particularly in the room, you're probably interested in UC Biomedical and Medical Science Society. These guys are such an amazing group. They run all kinds of industry engagement panels. They run tours of the research labs that are here on campus. They run sessions where if you are new to UC and you're new to your course and want to meet other students in those courses, they run study sessions for people. Yeah, they're a wonderful society, so highly recommend getting involved. All right, so how many of you here in the room, looks like a few people, well, how many of you basically don't know what units you need to be taking and how to progress to getting your degree? yeah, okay. Yeah, so quite a few people are sitting here thinking, what I wanted to come in here to do today is find out what I actually need to study. Completely fair enough. So we're basically going to have a quick chat now about how to build your course. So essentially, what you need to keep track of when you're thinking about building your course is actually the teaching periods and the dates. So you guys are about to take a number of units, probably 4 units, which are kind of like subjects, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But when you're starting any of your semesters, so we've got week 1 going into that just coming up now, you can self-enroll, so you can choose your units up until the end of the Friday of week 1. After that, you start needing to get lecturer approval. So you don't want to be making your decisions too late because we kick off straight away in week 1 with a heap of hours of content. So if you're missing them because you're swapping out in and out of units after that first week, it just becomes much harder to succeed. So you want to really try as best you can and figure out what units to be in your first week. Also note if you're requiring other staff to help you with that, for example, with credit applications or things like that, they need a lot more lead time. So as you're going through each semester, if you're thinking about your study, make sure you reach out for some support and some course advice early, because if you're trying to do it in the week before semester starts or the first week of semester, chances are there'll be too many students to get through. So you really want to think about that as soon as you possibly can. The other thing to think about is that the Friday of week 4 of every semester is this thing called census date. And that's the last day that you can withdraw from a unit without incurring any academic or financial penalty. So if you're kind of coming into your study and thinking, oh, I don't know whether I want to take 4 units or 3 units or 2 units or whatever it happens to be, that's all fine, but you want to make sure you've made that decision by the end of week 4. If you need to withdraw from a unit or 2, then that might be a really good decision for you, and we don't want you to have any negative consequences from that. Whereas sometimes we have students who don't make that decision and don't reflect on it, and then they get to week 8 or 9 or 10 and realize, oh, I think I'm going to fail a couple of units because I've taken too much on, or I've had some significant life event and I sort of haven't considered how that might impact my study. If you get past week 4 and you just let your units go, you'll actually get a result which is likely to be a fail, or it will be a fail if you fail the unit, and you'll also end up paying for it as well. Now, I don't want you to be stressed if you have a significant life event that happens to you that's out of your control after week 4. There are, of course, absolutely ways we can go about removing that from your transcript and withdrawing without those penalties, but there have to be justifiable reasons. And unfortunately, we see a lot of students who just let things slide and stop showing up to things, and we just don't want you to end up with these penalties thanks to that. So have a think about before week 4 how your study is going. Come have a chat to us early if you want to. Last thing here too with the examination period, so it's in weeks 14 and 15, you should be able to tell right away whether your units have exams or not. And actually they are run by the exams office, who announces the date for weeks 14 and 15. Your conveners don't get a choice about that. So all we can do is advertise the period in which there are exams. So you can see those dates already. We don't know when the actual date will be. So please be aware that if you book a family holiday and find out too late that there's an exam in the middle of it, that's actually not going to be a justifiable reason why you should be able to sit that exam at a different time. So we have the full dates of the semester that are there advertised well in advance, so you know when you might actually be needing to come in for assessment tasks. All right, so what's a unit? We talk about a lot of units and majors and courses and this kind of thing. It's like having to learn another language, basically, when you come to university. But when you hear myself or other conveners or perhaps people providing you with advice, when you hear us say the word unit, we're talking about a specific subject that you undertake. So heaps of you are probably about to take biological concepts, which is a subject or we refer to as a unit, or you might also have chemical foundations coming up. They're usually a semester long. They're usually worth 3 credit points. So your whole course adds up to 72 credit points overall. So each unit will make about 3 of them usually. And they also have a unique identifying code. So biological concepts has the unique code 11722. And the reason we do this is because we used to have a unit called Concepts in Biology, where maybe we're not the most imaginative bunch of people. So obviously there's easy to have confusion there. So we give things an individual unit code. So if you're seeing these being written down in emails, then it just means you can definitely figure out what unit you should be taking. Usually we have combinations of these individual units that add up to what we refer to as a major. So they're often 8 units altogether, and they progress through the levels. So they start with the more basic ones in your first year and they progress up to the more challenging ones at your 3rd year. But there's usually about 8 of them altogether, and we refer to that as a major. And your course already has these things built into it. So you don't have to worry about building a major. You just have to worry about making sure you're taking the required units that have those majors built into them. And the way we come up with these is essentially going to the people who employ our students and asking them what they need. So we talk to major researchers, we talk to people in industry, we talk to people in government and say, what skills are you requiring for people coming out with these degrees? And they let us know so that we can build these units into these majors that basically put you out there with the best possible set of skills to make you employable, essentially. We also have smaller numbers of units that come together to form minors, and that's something that you can discuss in course advice if you like, but most students actually finish their course without ever doing a minor, and you don't need to. So it's something we can discuss if you're interested in, but it's not something that you need to worry about as long as you're following your course pattern. What's the expected workload? So one unit, in other words, biological concepts, has an expected total workload of about 150 hours on average over the teaching period. So if you imagine the teaching period is, say, about 15 weeks long, so one unit is giving you 10 hours a week, and that's going to be combined with contact hours, so coming in, for example, for labs or tutorials or lectures or whatever it happens to be. But then you've got your independent study on top of that. So if you can imagine, full-time for most students is 4 units across a semester. If each of those units contributes 10 hours a week, that's 40 hours of study that you're expected to do. And for some of you in the room feeling a bit uncomfortable, you might have care responsibilities, you might have your own paid work on top of that. Just think about, I guess, how you can fit in those things, or how you can fit your study in on top of those things. If you're sitting here thinking, I'm going to have trouble fitting that in, you're actually better off, I guess, coming and talking to us early in the next couple of weeks and seeing if perhaps dropping down to 3 units might be better off for you. Particularly with the unit combinations you're doing, there are some really easy ways to spread some of these things out. And obviously it might make your study a little longer, but we really do find for a lot of students, it's far better to make a decision early and maybe take only 3 units a semester when your life is pretty busy than it is to keep trying to take 4 and failing 1 or 2. So have a think about it with that sort of census date in mind, Friday week 4. Have a think about how you're traveling in the first couple of weeks with the rest of your responsibilities, and come have a chat to us if you think withdrawing from a unit might be helpful. All right, so what's our faculty like? What are you going to experience when you're doing your study? So we're part of the School of Science, and the School of Science actually is one of the 2 schools in the Faculty of Science and Technology. So the other school is Information Technology, and you can take a heap of units, I guess, from either school depending on what your course is. Within the units that you're taking in the School of Science, you'll of course see medical science, biomedical science, and general science students, but some of the units you take are actually core units across the whole of the School of Science. So you're going to be studying with environmental science students, possibly some forensic studies students, but also a heap of students from education and also from health, because you can imagine a lot of our science units have a heap of crossover and a heap of utility for a whole lot of other people going out doing a whole lot of other jobs. So you're going to really, I guess, get to meet a lot of people. And in a lot of our units, we're deliberately trying to get group work across different faculty areas and across different school areas, because once you're out there in the workplace, you're going to be working with a lot of different people. So it's really embedded into the structure of your study that you're going to get to be exposed to a lot of people with a lot of different skill sets. Okay, so Bachelor of Science, Biomedical Science, that's one of our courses. You'll notice not only do our units have individual codes, but as do our actual courses. Hopefully you're in the room if you're doing Biomedical Science, Medical Science, or the Bachelor of Science. I'm just going to go through some of the pathways involved in this, some of the career options you have afterwards, and also what those courses look like. And then if we have any questions at the end, you're welcome to stick around. I'll be here. You can ask me any questions that you like. All right, so what are some of our career paths? I mean, I'm a big believer that a science degree basically teaches you how to think about things. So for myself, I went and did a job after my PhD in research chemistry that had nothing to do with chemistry at all. It was a government job working in countering violent extremism. So yeah, completely different field. But essentially, if you've got one of our named courses here, so looking at biomedical science or medical science, there are still a heap of different options for you. So we could be looking at going into biotechnology, biochemistry, microbiology, depending on the individual units that you're choosing to take. So you could actually be working as a research scientist. You could end up, however, going into something like the policy area, so going into the public service. Also with these careers, or I guess, sorry, with these courses that we're taking, there's oftentimes pathways if you're taking medical science, for example, into becoming a doctor. How many of you? Yeah, yep, a few people in the room who would like to do that. But also allied health. So particularly if you're a biomedical science student, you might be considering pathways into something like nutrition or physio or pharmacy. So there's also some ways going into there. For those of you who are in the general science course, you have a heap of choice in your course from a lot of the units to the majors that you're doing. So that's also some broad options for you as well. Feel free to come and have a chat. All of those courses can end up in postgraduate study if you want to go on further. So they lead to, I guess, careers immediately once you're finished, and we embed some things in our courses that help you get into those careers basically straight away. But if you really love what you're doing and you want to continue to postgrad study, all 3 of those courses will get you there. Okay, so what are the strengths of some of our courses? As I mentioned before, we're incredibly fortunate here to have so many researchers directly involved in writing and producing your units for you. So we're really, really applied in that sense. We've also got a number of research centres that are embedded here at UC, so you really get access to some of that cutting edge research that's happening at all times. What we also have though in our courses is we've embedded work integrated learning. So what that means is as part of your degree, by definition, you're going to do a series of units that will actually end up with you doing a work placement as part of your study, which essentially just builds that into your CV the minute you've finished your course. So you guys are all going to finish your course having actually embedded yourself, whether it's in industry, whether it's in the government, whether it's in a research group, whatever things you're most interested in pursuing afterwards as your career, you get to spend some time in those workplaces, which basically helps you sell yourself and just have those skills at the end of it. All right, so what do your degrees look like? Here's a couple of tips for you. I'm going to go through these individually, so if you're sitting here and this is not the course for you, there'll still be some useful things. You actually can switch between courses as well, so it is well worth knowing what the other science courses are like. But this is the first one, NPB 001, so Bachelor of Science brackets Biomedical Science. So you can see here that the first thing that you will do is a core major in science, and that's the blue units we can see here. Some of them are content units or foundations units, so a bit of biology, a bit of chemistry, some physics and some data analysis. But then we've also got these professionalism units. So something called professional orientation in science, professional practice 1, professional practice 2, and professional evidence. These are a series of units where, as we mentioned before, you're building those professional skills and embedding yourself in a workplace to set yourself up for a career once you've finished. This core major, it's not just for biomedical science. Any student studying any science in our school has to do these 8 units altogether. So this is where you'll see the environmental scientists as well. You might see some forensic scientists, the general science students, everyone will be in those 8 units altogether. One thing I'll flag for all of you at this stage is one of these foundation units that's a required unit is called chemical concepts. It's in semester 2 every year. It actually has assumed knowledge of year 12 chemistry. So if you have not done high school chemistry before, or you're not perhaps feeling confident, then what we actually recommend is that you take another unit called chemical foundations, and you can slot that in semester 1 or in winter term. If you slot it in semester 1, you just move PO, because you'll see you have an open elective here in semester 2. You just swap PO and your open elective. Those two can be swapped around. Highly recommend doing chemical foundations first if you haven't done chemical concepts. So that helps you out with those units. You then have a specialist major in biomedical science. So that's another 8 units that you can see in green there. And then the balance is an extra 8 units. These are your open electives. If you have open electives, you can fill these with another major if you want to, or you can use them wherever you want across UC. So for example, a lot of students who might be interested in going into a policy related area might take some units over in business, government and law. Some of you might be interested in communication, so you might move over and do some units in the Faculty of Art and Design. There's all kinds of places where you can take these units across UC, but you really should be tailoring them to your own interests. They're totally free, open electives, so they can be at any level. So you want to think about going in your first semester for what you might want to use them for. All right, medical science. You guys are the same in the sense that you've got all of those same 8 units in your core major of science. The only difference you guys might see on the screen here is, unlike the biomedical science guys who had their final 8 units were open electives, your final 8 units are also a second specialist major. So 100% of your units have been prescribed for you. The upside to this is, I guess, we really recommend if students definitely know they want to go on to postgrad study in medicine, this is a good degree for them, or definitely know they want to be a medical science researcher, this is a good degree for them, because we've picked out those highly specialised units for you already. The only downside to it, I guess, is if you're not certain that those are the things you want to do, it does lock you into a study pattern. So for example, if you fail or need to withdraw from any one of these 24 units that you can see here, they are all required units, so there's no flexibility in that study. So there's definitely pros and cons for doing this course, and highly advantageous if you know that that's where you want to go. But if you're sitting in that degree thinking, oh, actually I want a bit more flexibility, actually the Bachelor of Biomedical Science can still get you to the same places, but with a bit more flexibility. So again, feel free to come and have a chat if you want to talk through some of your options. You'll notice if you're in medical science here, we still have the same assumed knowledge for chemical concepts, but you actually can't fit chemical foundations in if you want to do some extra study first because you've got no units spare. But no, never fear, we actually run a bridging course in winter term, so it doesn't go towards your degree, if you like, but it does give you some of that foundational knowledge just to support you going into that unit. And for those of you in the room who are in the Bachelor of Science, this is a super flexible course. So once again, you still have those same core major 8 units that you can see here in blue. Your next 8 units, you get to choose a specialist major. So unlike the other couple of courses where we've chosen them for you, which is why they're named degrees, in your Bachelor of Science, you can curate your own bespoke course. So we've set up a number of suggested specialist majors for you. So for example, you can do the biomedical science or environmental, but you can also do biological or chemical sciences. We've got human movement, we've got nutrition studies. There's all kinds of things that you can choose from, and then you would fit them into your study. And then essentially your last 8 units are also can be used for another breadth major or can be used as open electives. This is probably the most flexible one. For those of you who might be choosing your specialist major, we've actually put up suggested study plans on that course advice site for all of those, so you can go right now and see what your study would look like for the next 3 years if you wanted to. All right, so just a final note here. For your course advice, first instance, have a look at that School of Science Advice Canvas site there. It's got all the study plans, frequently asked questions, who to go for help, all of those kinds of things. And also our digital handbook, which shows you all of the units that are there. If you have a question after looking at both of those things, then feel free to email it through to this SciTech student inquiries address, and that team will send you either to myself or the best person to answer your question. But basically, I just wanted to say welcome to UC. We are so pleased to see you here, particularly face-to-face after the last couple of years. We know it's been a pretty tough time, whether it's studying online at school or working from home with work, all those kinds of things. So we really are thrilled to have you back here on campus and to see you. Let us know if you have any questions. I'll stick around afterwards if you need any course advice. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you in your units and around campus coming up. Okay, see you later, guys.